Here's another little project to try to figure out what the heck's wrong with it. This is a Harman Kardon AVR-135 stereo receiver. Manufacture date on the back is August 2005, so it's not a brand new receiver, but it's a modern era receiver. It's 6 channels, 40 watts per channel. And have a look inside of it here real quick. I took one of the boards out already. Back in here, it went about right here. It's this board right here, because I've got to get down to the main board at the bottom there. So all this has to come out. But the problem with this receiver is we have power, but that's about it. So let me push the button here. And that's all it does. No display, no nothing on it. Push the standby button, nothing. So I'm guessing the problem is going to be in the standby circuit. Either that or there's another problem that's preventing this receiver from turning on. I did try the reset button procedure, which is to press the tone mode button right here. It's kind of dark, but there it is, for a few seconds, and that didn't do anything at all. It's weird, since I unplugged that one board though, this light's not flickering. It was flickering before, but it's not now. It's kind of strange. But yeah, that's all it does. At least this thing's got an honest-to-God power switch on it though. But there's no relay clicks going on. None of that's taking place. So I think there's going to be a problem with the standby circuit. That's my guess, and that's on that main board way at the bottom there. You can see the standby transformer in the back there. So I got to get down to that board and see if I can test the regulator, the voltage regulator on there. Make sure it's not shorted and proceed from there. So that's where I'm at right now with this thing. I've got the service manual up, which thankfully was available for free. That's always a pleasant surprise. And it looks like a pretty decent service manual too, so hopefully I'll be able to knock this thing out pretty easily. It may also be suffering from a bad capacitor. That guy right there looks like he's kind of bulged a little bit on the top. And I do think that's part of the standby circuit there. And that one right there might be the voltage regulator I need to get to. There's a few voltage regulators on there, so I'm going to have to see and make sure that that's the one I'm looking for. That's in the service manual. But that capacitor is a little bit bulged right there, that big guy right there, compared to the other ones. So he might be our problem. Might just be a bad capacitor on this motherboard, or on this main board I should say. Yeah, the rest of them look fine. I don't see anything burned, nothing smells burned, nothing appears to have gone up in flame. So I don't know. There's a button right here, it looks like a reset button. I might have to push that. Let's see, I gotta plug it back in here. I'm just gonna push that and see what it does. I have no idea what that does. But I'm not getting anything new coming from it, so maybe that's another reset button, I don't know. But if it is, it's not working. Well, this mess on the table used to be a stereo receiver. Got the back panel taken off of this thing right here. It's held in with a bunch of screws along the bottom there. One on each side over here. Whole thing pops off. Of course, you got all these screws holding the inputs and speaker lugs to the back of this thing. Two things I left on there was the antenna board and the component video board. So it's just attached to the main board with a cable, and I also left that phono, or no, that's a subwoofer preamp, okay, on there as well. I didn't have to take the screw out, but I didn't know that at that moment. But anyway, this is what we've got down to here. Here's the board that was on there. It's just cabled up right here with some zip ties holding it in there, so I don't need to worry about getting that out of the way. It looks to me like this is, by the way, the voltage regulator I was looking at in the service manual. That is the guy. So I'm going to check him out when I get this out of here. I've got a pretty good feeling that that guy right there is causing all the problems. That's what my gut feeling is. But I got to get this whole main board assembly out of here. And we've got several transistors down here for the speakers that are screwed on to this heatsink. We've also got some little transistor boards right here that have an adjustment on them, and I think these are the biasing transistors right here. It's because they've got that little adjustment on them. That's for the bias adjustment for each transistor there. And I was looking at this thing, and I think the easier way is going to be, this whole thing looks like it can come out as one module. The heatsink, the main board, looks like that can come out of here as one module. The only thing I'm going to have to do is cut this zip tie right here and unplug this cable, because this board is fixed to the main board down here, and it's also attached. There's, well, 3 transistors on this board that are fixed to this heatsink as well. So I take this cable off, and we've got only 4 screws to deal with on this heatsink, and that should come out of there. There's one there, there's one guy there, there's one that lives up under this cable right here, right there, and then there's another one over here. I'm going to have to get a long screwdriver to get down into there. But those are the only screws that I see that are holding that heatsink on. And the main board down here, there's a screw holding that main board to the heatsink, and there's also one under here as well. It's probably kind of hard to see. Yeah, you can see it right there. So I'm pretty sure this thing's going to come out of here as one complete unit, which is going to be nice, because then I don't have to undo all those transistors and then have to put them back in and re-slather them with heatsink compound and stuff like that. I've got a pretty good feeling that that capacitor is all that's wrong with this thing. I'm feeling good about this. I think this is going to be a fairly easy project. Well, I'll be the first one to admit that I'm a little bit stunned that that actually worked. This whole thing came out here as one complete module. I think the stereo receiver actually wants to get fixed, because so far everything's going really well. Which means it's probably going to go bad in a quick flash of smoke pretty quickly. But you can see that capacitor now. Easily accessible, I hope. And you can see the pad, the traces there for that voltage regulator. So I'm going to check those. I'm going to check these diodes here. We've got a few diodes around here. We got 1, 2, 3. We got a capacitor there. Some more capacitors there. Most of those are the ceramic type. We've got a couple. Well, we got 4 electrolytics there. I have a hard time believing those diodes are bad, but you never know. They could be, and it's worth checking. I don't think they are, but like I said, we'll check those and make sure they're okay. I think that capacitor is going to be the problem. Let's see, what brand are these? Koshin. Koshin. Let me zoom in on that right there. You can see it right. I guess you can see it right there in that big cap. Koshin. I've never heard of that brand before, and that's probably the whole problem with this receiver. This one's, this one's bulged too. Boy, this thing might need a whole recap job. I wasn't planning on that. But this one's bulged, which means it's going bad. Which means if those 2 are going bad, that means all of these are probably on their way out, guys. Every stinking one of these. There's not that many caps in here, though. I'm actually surprised. It won't be hard to recap this thing, but I think in the interests of, making sure this thing's actually up and running properly, I'm going to have to replace these caps. Although these I/O boards are riddled with capacitors too, it's the same brand. So, yeah, it would be a little bit more expensive if I recap these, but I don't think I'm going to recap these. I don't think I'm going to bother with these. The main board is what's really important. These are most of these. I'm sure these are probably okay. I don't know. It's just a lot of work. A lot of work I don't really feel like doing, and a lot of money to have to fork out to recap all these boards. But well, Santa dropped off in a huge red bag full of capacitors for me to get started on this project. Going to be a lot of fun. First board I'm going to tackle is going to be simple and easy. This little power supply board right here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 capacitors on that board. Get those changed out and get him done. Start working on the rest of this thing. There'll be a lot to do here. Probably going to take a few days to finish it up, but got to get started on it so we can get it done. So I got a couple of the capacitors replaced on this board. One thing I'm noticing is that the new caps are looking like they're bigger. I'm not sure if all of them are going to be bigger, but the ones I've replaced so far, except the little one. The little one is about the same size, but these bigger ones are actually a bigger cap. The new ones, here's the old one here. This is a 25 volt 3300 UF. And exact same cap here. You can see it's quite a bit taller. Same diameter. It's kind of interesting actually. This thing doesn't feel like there's anything in it. These other caps, this guy right here, that's the replacement one for him. He's a little bit taller. Same diameter. He's just a little bit taller. And that's not going to be a problem because these things are going to be mounted like this, inside towards here, and then there's also plenty of room over here for them to stick up, so it won't be a problem. It won't be a clearance issue or anything, but it's just kind of interesting. This guy right here, again, is the same diameter as that one, but he's towers over it quite a bit there. Probably about what is that, about a quarter bigger, something like that. I found that kind of interesting. Night number 2, the Harman Kardon recapping project here. I got this board recapped as I showed before, and I also got the caps replaced on the standby area right here. Those have all been replaced and looking beautiful. So now I'm focused on the main filter caps, and these are going to be a real big pain in the butt to do. Let me zoom in a little bit here on those. Move this thing down a little bit. So all of these main filter caps right here all have glue around them. Every one of them, all around the entire cap on the bottom. And I started to desolder one of them. Right, let's see, where's the camera at? Right there. Started to desolder these two, but I've got to get the cap freed from the board because there's a lot of glue on there. It's kind of, well, it's becoming a bit of a problem. I can't just pull those things off. I haven't been able to pry it off. I was able to pry the caps off that are on this board that were glued down. There was 3 of them. These larger caps were all glued down. I was able to crack the glue on those. But this one, haven't had any luck with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try some different chemicals. I'm going to try some 91% alcohol, try some acetone, maybe a little bit of brake cleaner, some contact cleaner. I'm going to see if anything will actually melt this glue or liquefy it enough to where I can get these caps out of there. Because otherwise this is going to be a real time consuming area, and it'll probably take me just as long to replace these as it will to replace all of these caps, just because of that damn glue they put on there. So I'll figure out something here and report back in a few minutes. So it took me about a half hour to get all these out of here, but I finally did it. No chemical even came close to touching that stuff, so unfortunately I had to just kind of pop them out. But what I did was I cut around the base where it was glued right here with a razor blade. and just trying to score it there, and then I just had to kind of twist them off. And this one here didn't come off that way, so I got the screwdriver under the corner of it there and just kind of twisted it, and it popped right off. So that's about all I could really figure out to do. But there you go. You can see that cap right there. That's one of the main filter caps. And Kardon brand again. It's kind of interesting to look these up. Well, I just kind of looked up, did a Google search on Kardon, and I came across that bad capacitors forum, and people say, well, I don't really know anything about those caps, but they're probably pretty good as long as they're used for the correct purpose. And well, yeah, I mean, all caps have a certain purpose, but Kardon, I'm going to say those are crappy caps. Never heard of them. The main filter caps I'm putting in here are a little bit shorter, but they're a little bit fatter. However, they're fitting in here just fine, so no big deal. Just plug and play pretty much. Got this one soldered in, so I got to do the others, and then I can get started on the rest of these little caps, which none of those are glued down, so it should go pretty quick. It'll probably take a little more than a half hour to do all those, but yeah, we'll see. So I had a little bit of an interesting surprise starting to replace these main filter caps here. I was bending the prongs there a little bit so I can get it into the holes. The it's really tight fit right here with these caps, but I contacted those two together and let a little bit of a spark, and yeah, I kind of jumped and a little bit of poo came out when that happened. I was completely shocked. This thing has energy in it, so let me show you how much energy is actually in this thing. I think this is the cap that was charged. I checked the other one and it didn't have, had like 0.2 in it, but it's got about 2.5. Well, you can't see it on the camera, can you? Let me move the meter over here so my arm isn't blocking everything. We got 2.5 volts right there on that capacitor. I don't know how long these things have been sitting at Mauser, and I've had them for a week, but apparently they must charge these and test these at the factory when they're manufactured. I don't know how else this would have 2.5 volts in it. I don't think they would have used this and returned it or whatever, but yeah, pre-charged from Mauser. So yeah, that kind of surprised me a little bit. I've never had that experience before with these things, brand new, having a charge to them. So that guess you learn something new every day. Alright, so I got everything soldered on there very nicely. Probably can't even tell where I soldered because it looks like factory on this board. Yeah, got everything done tonight, so it only took a couple nights to do this. Not too bad. All those new caps in there, they're a little bit taller than the old ones, but that's alright. There's plenty of room in here. Hopefully that means they're a little bit better. They all are 105 C temperature caps. The old ones were 85, which is pretty typical, I suppose. Yeah, looking good, looking good. Now I just got to put the thing back together and hope it doesn't blow up on me. Alright, the moment has arrived. I've got this thing put back together just enough that I can give it a power on test. See if recapping this thing is what fixed it. I don't have one of the boards in there. That's okay, it's just an input board. Power supply board way in the back there where that power cord comes in. That's precariously perched. Hopefully it stays right there. Otherwise we're going to have a little bit of a sparky fest going on here and scare the crap out of me on camera. So let's find out here. I've got power plugged into it. Go ahead and hit the switch. Okay, so we've got our standby light. That's kind of a nice thing about this receiver. I do like that it actually has a physical power switch to it. So that's what we had before. I don't see a flickering there in that light. Let's push the standby. Would you look at that? I was right. It's just those caps went bad. Prevented it from coming out of standby. So, let's see if this works. Yep, we got volume control. Seems to be working. I have no idea how to tune this thing. And there's preset tune. Let's see, tune. Yep, it's tuning. I don't have anything plugged up to it for an antenna. See, it's searching for it, so that's working. So it looks like to me we should be good to go. Goes to sleep. Comes out of sleep. I heard relays clicking, so hopefully that means that it's coming out of protection. Although I don't know if I've got the speakers actually turned on here. Yeah, I'll get that back panel back on and get this thing put back together for the most part, and hook up some speakers and see what we got. It's a very colorful back on this thing. All those speaker terminals color-coded like that. It's pretty cool. Coming to the home stretch here, I just got to plug that board back in there, this upper video input-output board right here. I got a couple cables to plug in still. This is the tuner board right up here. I left that attached to the back. That can stay attached. The pre-out, subwoofer pre-out can stay attached, and so can this component video. Those are separate boards, so those can all stay attached. I suppose this one probably could too, actually. That could stay attached. This one's got to be unscrewed, and so does the speaker terminals. Oh, and so does the outlets as well. But yeah, I think this thing's made a full recovery. We'll get some speakers plugged up to this thing and see what it sounds like. All right, here goes nothing. Takes that thing a second to come on. Turn that volume down. Alright, let's see how this thing works here. Let's find ourselves a station. Got the antenna hooked up. My makeshift antenna. I think I've got it plugged into the right thing there. Oh, I should have picked that station up. So I've got a new problem I've got to deal with. I'm not getting any audio out of the tuner, nor am I getting any audio out of anything else, any other input. The tuner is also not actually functioning. It just cycles through and never picks up a station. So the tuner itself is not functional. The inputs are not working. There's nothing on the volume control. It's just dead silent. So what I have been looking at, this board, I don't think the main processor unit up here is actually controlling anything back here. This board, you get power to all these boards from this one right here. There's a 15 volt feed and a negative 15 volt, but I'm looking at the positive 15 right now off this board. It's one of the pins over here. and it is reading no voltage while the unit's on. And I don't have any heat out of these massive resistors right here. They're not hot at all. These voltage regulators are completely cold, so I don't appear to be getting any voltage to any of these boards right here, which would explain why I have no inputs, no control of anything here. So I gotta trace that out. I'm gonna have to dig out the schematic for this one, trace that back, and figure out where the hell those are going and why it's not getting any power. I don't know if something else is blown here. I looked at the fuses. There's several fuses up there on the transformer, as well as one back there on that main power board where the accessory plugs are at, and none of those are blown. I did a reset on the receiver. There's actually a reset button right there on top of the transformer, and that didn't fix it either. So I'm going to have to figure out why I don't have any power. It looks to me like the power is coming in from this plug right here. These ones right here. There's also some audio, but it looks to me like the power might be coming into there, but it might be coming in down through the board that I just recapped. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to have to figure out, like I said, I'm going to have to go through the service manual and figure out exactly where the hell that power feed is. Maybe I just didn't get that board plugged in far enough. I don't think so. I don't think I can shove it in there any further than I got it, but I suppose it's possible. I don't think there's any broken solder joints on it, but again, I suppose that's possible. Anything's possible at this point since it's not working. So that's where I'm stuck at right now. It's too bad I couldn't have been able to figure that out before I put this all back together, but unfortunately there's not really, you really kind of have to put most of this back together at least to figure that out. But damn, sometimes problems like this really suck, you know. But there was no way for me to test this before because it wouldn't turn on. I guess I probably could have bypassed the standby to force it to turn on, but yeah. So more hunting and pecking to do. Alright, so I was able to trace out the problem here, and as you can see I've got the receiver back together. It's been about another 4 or 5 days since the last video because I had to order more parts, but I put this thing all back together in preparation for the repair because it was an easy repair. The 15 volts, I traced that back all the way through this board, and I got up to this board right here, this little board that has those voltage regulators, and this is the guy right here that supplies both the positive and negative 15 voltages for all your accessory boards right here, the tuner, the video board, and the other input-output board right here. As you can see, there's actually a crystal audio chip right there. Kind of common to see those in computers actually, but it's kind of fun to see that right here. But nevertheless, I got power back to these boards here, and it is working right now. And these transistors up here are, they're pretty warm. But needless to say, I had to trace this all back, and the schematic on this thing is absolutely horrible. It was easier just to trace that circuit back with a digital voltmeter on the continuity tester and find out where it went. So remember, this board had that bad bulged capacitor on it right there, which I changed out. So we come back a little bit further here, and it's actually getting power from the transformer directly. And these two resistors right here were open, so he was not getting any power. These two resistors are the two that I had to order. I got these off eBay because Mauser did not have the correct resistors in stock, the specific ohm that I needed for this. These are current limiting resistors, I believe. So they're using these as fusible resistors. There's 4 of them on here, and these two right here were open, so they got blown. So I replaced those, and now everything is working as it should be. My suspicion is that that capacitor right there, I haven't tested it. I've actually already thrown those away, I think. But that capacitor being bulged, one of them anyway was bulged, may have been shorted out or was causing some kind of an overcurrent condition that blew these resistors. That's my guess. Those are working now, and so as you can see, I've got the unit powered back up, and I've done a little bit of a audio recording, testing this receiver, and let you see what you think of the sound of this thing.
You've got a friend in Lynn Buys houses.
George Street on 100.
Be rolling me up. You're a real life fantasy. You're a real life fantasy. But you're moving so carefully. Let's start living dangerously. You better watch out. You better not.
So to sum up this project, I'd give this thing probably about a 4 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. I would give it a 3 had it not been for the fact that that standby circuit was on the main board and the whole thing had to be taken out of there. But on this particular Harman Kardon, and I know some of the other models out there are more of a pain in the butt to work on, this one was pretty straightforward. It was, I would say, fairly logically laid out. You got this whole bottom board assembly here and the heatsink, which just comes out as one module, and all these boards come out. Everything is ribbon cabled here for all your data. All these plugs come off. This board right here unplugs on both this board right here and then the main board down below, so that's easy. It's not soldered on like some of them are. And like I said, everything just unplugs on this thing, so it's pretty well logically laid out. It's I would say it's fairly easy to work on. Like I said, I give it a 4 out of 10 just because that standby right there. I would have rather seen that somewhere else back here on a separate board. It would have made life a whole heck of a lot easier. But since there were some bad capacitors on this board, you know, that's why I decided to change these capacitors, at least the hardest working ones that I figured anyway, were probably on their way of going out in a pretty short amount of time anyway. Those two were blown, starting to go. The rest are probably not far behind, so everything's been rekept on the main board and on this power supply board right here, and it's sounding pretty good. I think the tuner's kind of weak on this thing as far as being able to receive stations. There's a few stations that this thing should be able to pick up, especially since I've got a pretty fancy antenna hooked up to it right now. It uses the coaxial plug right here for the FM. So that's why I'm using that. Should be picking up more stations than it is with that antenna, but it's pretty common for this era of receiver that's not a super high-end. I do think my Pioneer Elite receivers, the 24TX and the 09, or no, the 07TX, I think it was 09 or 07, I can't remember now. Those two had really good tuners in them. Very good sounding, very strong tuners. They were really good. Of course, you'd expect that from an Elite brand of stereo receiver, but this is a good receiver. I don't know how long it's been sitting dead, but we got up and working once again, and I was not defeated on this project. So thank you very much for watching, and see you again right here on the Wayback Tech channel. Peace out, everybody.